The words on top of the marquee are love all, feed all. We wanted that to be a very direct expression of the Dharma work.
Of course, the word Dharma has 11 meanings according to the great second Buddha, Vasubandhu. Of these 11 meanings, the highest meaning is reality itself, ultimate reality. The Indian view in general of reality is that reality is goodness.
Yeah.
The Indian people were happy. The Indian people were lucky. It always has been a melting pot, India. It is the most prosperous, most fertile part of Eurasia. 35 times larger than the Nile alluvium, maybe 20 times larger than the Tigris-Euphrates alluvium, which those are the two other richest ones in Eurasia, all of Eurasia.
I often feel that if you could slaughter an animal, then there's not much difference between slaughtering another human. It becomes...
I don't pretend to be a wholly vegetarian personally myself, but I admire it, and I have had years where I had complete vegetarian.
The texts that you write give us the motivation and the energy or the teachings to be able to do that.
You know, which all the different isms, they have their different versions of Pure Lands. And in those Pure Lands, you don't need coarse food. You just, you do samadhi food. And they get energy from air and things like that.
So what is the soft power like, if you were to talk about?
Well, the original soft power promoter was not Young and Rubicam. The original soft power promoter was Ashoka, actually, that we know in history, where he said, I conquered Orissa, Kalinga it was called at that time, and I rode over the battlefield after victory, and I saw all the bloody bodies and the weeping relatives and the whole thing, and I'll never do that again.
You once told me about Hanuman being one of the progenitors of the Tibetan.
The Tibetans have a legend that their progenitor was a monkey.
Oh, that's interesting.
They have Hanuman as a KD was the one who was really noticed that both Ram and Hanuman are in the army of Kalki. And that's for Hindus that can be Vishnu, and for Buddhists that's a kind of Vajrapani. So they both connect in the future.
Bob?
Yes.
You are one of my favorite human beings on planet Earth.
Oh my God.
I love you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to London.
Okay.
And I was on the flight back from India when I learned that you were going to be in town, and I just got
great.
very excited.
Oh, wonderful.
And then,
it's great seeing you with your food tent there.
So yes,
pavilion there.
We're very lucky to have you.
Food shala, let's say,
yeah.
on the street there in that downtown area, I guess that is.
What did you feel? What was your feeling of the environment there and the service? What did you think about it?
That's really great.
So it's
Very
called
proud of you.
Love all, feed all.
What's that?
The words on top of the marquee are love all, feed all.
Okay.
So we wanted that to be a very direct expression of the Dharma work.
Of course.
Almost I see it like a meditation.
It is, of course.
So could you speak to that a little bit? Because I want to largely remain quiet as you speak. What would you say about direct Dharma?
The word Dharma has 11 meanings according to the great second Buddha, Vasubandhu, who lived in the early part of the Gupta era, around the 5th century. And of these 11 meanings, the highest meaning is reality itself, ultimate reality. Dharma means. So then when Dharma means teaching or path, spiritually teaching, it has to do with how to discover what is the ultimate reality, right? So the Indian view in general of reality is that reality is goodness.
Yeah.
The Indian people were happy. The Indian people were lucky. It always has been a melting pot, India. Before the Vedic people, there were the Harappan people. And it is the most prosperous, most fertile part of Eurasia. It's the great Indus Valley and the Ganga and the Yamuna and all that area. But in the earlier period, before they cleared much jungle, it was the Indus Valley. It was 35 times larger than the Nile alluvium, maybe 20 times larger than the Tigris-Euphrates alluvium, which those are the two other richest ones in Eurasia, all of Eurasia. The Nile is Africa, but still Mediterranean, right? So therefore, the Indian people somehow had the idea, unlike in the West, that reality is good, and it holds you and takes care of you, and you don't have to fear reality. They did have now and then some fearsome deities, and they were aware that there was some sort of demonic force sometimes in the universe, but only based on delusion, confusion, because ultimately, since all beings are together in a reality that is ultimately nurturing, therefore, then they don't really have to fight. It's not life is not a zero-sum game, where your life doesn't have to depend on taking lives of other beings, actually.
Yeah.
And so that was India. And for example, India, before they heard about veganism, they naturally went vegetarian,
yeah,
because it was less, not necessary economically, and it was actually negative economically to live by killing animals. There were tigers and lions, and so there was probably some hunting and things like that. But they were, even Ashoka in the 3rd century BCE, in one of his pillar edicts, he says, well, before my reign, people ate like 100 peacocks a day and a deer a day, and every day like slaughtered lots of deers and peacocks and birds and chickens. Since I've done it, we have 1 peacock a day and a deer a week, and we're trying to get off of that even. And it's better not to eat animals, you know. Yeah. And so that spread naturally in India, because economically living the life of other beings is bad. And if you live killing animals, then you sort of begin, if you get really hungry, you start seeing like Hanuman might make a good bunch of burgers. So killing animals makes people a little bit less gentle about each other,
right?
Subconsciously. You know?
I often feel that if you could slaughter an animal, then there's not much difference between slaughtering another human. It becomes
exactly.
easier.
I don't pretend to be a wholly vegetarian personally myself, but I admire it, and I have had years where I had complete vegetarian, but I kind of got off it, I guess, partly bad habit and partly because I gained a lot of weight. But butter and sugar and this and that, I was actually 50, 60 pounds more than I am today.
Wow.
At a certain point of my glory.
You know, the Ashokan edicts.
What?
The Ashoka's edicts that you mentioned, for me, they are the expression of Sanatana, or the universal Dharma.
Exactly.
That he spoke about, that not particular
not a particular ism. And that is the Indian way, because it was a melting pot. And they didn't want to kill each other over some ideology, although certain schools would get like that. The human beings will always invent this and that, you know. So, but in general, there was great tolerance. I mean, for example, in the West, you have Allah, Jehovah, Yahweh, and then they're fighting badly, crusades, jihads. They've been killing, and anti-Semitic behavior. They've been very bad over the years, fighting because of different names of supposedly one good God.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same Abrahamic God, you know, but yet they've been killing each other. Whereas in India, you have had Shaivites and Vaishnavites and so on, but then they say, well, Vishnu is emanation of Shiva, or Shiva is emanation of Vishnu. So they sort of interfold each other a little bit like that. I mean,
I don't think there's been any real wars between the Shaivites and the Vaishnavites.
That's right. So, you know, so Jesus is a Buddha, you know. Buddha is a loving being like Jesus, etc. Eventually, we should try to get like that on the planet, you know. Then people can prefer the form that they like, but without thinking that they know the other form is something bad, you know. And I objected to that as a small child. They told me I couldn't understand the world, but I had to do whatever they said God said. And they were very strict, of trying to be strict with me about it, and I resisted. I said, why are you telling me I have to do like this and that when you don't know anything? Yeah. You say you can understand. God knows, and you think that God wrote this, but you don't know what God really said. And you didn't talk to him. You know, you're not Moses. And even Moses says he doesn't know, but just do this, you know. So anyway, I was challenged them when I was young. And then I was so happy discovering the Buddha and India, where, you know, there's the concept of prajna, wisdom, that you're supposed to understand, which is either Hindu, Buddhist, Jain. They all give confidence that the human being can understand reality. And reality is good. So now, because reality is good, and because reality holds you, and because reality is nurturing, therefore, feeding people who are hungry is already sharing Dharma with them. It is showing that reality is not wanting you to starve. So it's really wonderful what you do. That's why I admire your work so much. And I'm very lazy myself. I'm going to live in an ivory tower reading some ancient text. And you're out there feeding people, and that's wonderful.
But it's the text that you write that inspire. The text that you write give us the motivation and the energy or the teachings to be able to do that.
Okay, good.
So I think we need the edicts as well as the people who follow them out. It's much easier just to do what we do.
Well, if we go to some Pure Land, which have all the different isms, they have their different versions of Pure Land. And in those Pure Lands, you don't need coarse food. You do samadhi food, and they get energy from the air and things like that. And so the reality directly does feed people, actually, with that kind of infinite energy, even without coarse food. It's good to be in those Pure Lands where you don't need coarse food. If you don't have coarse food, you don't have coarse excretions. So you don't need a sewage system.
Well, I think everything that you write about or everything that you share, and we heard you speaking at the Nehru Center a few days ago, is about universal values.
Yes.
Love, compassion, friendship, kindness, wisdom.
And people in the West think love is some idiot does that, and then it's bad because other people take advantage of them, and if they think their compassion and love are something self-destructive. But actually, love and compassion are empowering completely, in fact. And the reality of it is. But sometimes it doesn't look like that. So that's, we have to, the Indian civilization was advanced in knowing that. And therefore, they were gentler than the colonial civilizations. And therefore, they lost the battle. But in which neighborhood do people think that the mafiosi who's coming around with a protection racket and threatening people with violence is the superior one?
Yeah.
Well, are you afraid of them? But they could beat you up. But you don't think of them as better than you, actually. The one who is more gentle is actually better. We all agree.
And I hope, there's very few voices sharing that, like His Holiness Dalai Lama is sharing that. But actually in the world,
His
not
Holiness
many.
is the key one.
Yeah.
Right now. But there are many, actually. And actually, in a lot of families, the women are the voice of that, actually, rather than the men. Because the men are more insecure and they think they're defending things. They have to defend things. And the women know that then and appreciate that they do that. But on the other hand, the women are the ones who know the power of sharing and the power of generosity and the power of compassion and so forth. They're the leaders in that, actually. And so we have to listen to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we need that softer power.
We do. That's right.
That Shakti is actually a softer power that's missing.
Soft power, that's it.
So what is the soft power? Like, if you were to talk about...
Well, the original soft power promoter was not Young and Rubicam. The original soft power promoter was Ashoka, actually, that we know in history, where he said, I conquered Orissa and Kalinga, it was called at that time. And I rode over the battlefield after victory, and I saw all the bloody bodies and the weeping relatives and the whole thing. And I'll never do that again. So he gave up hard power, which he called Khadga Vijaya, conquest by the sword. And he said, I only am interested in Dhamma Vijaya, conquer by reality, conquer by reality, by teaching. Dhamma can mean religion, can mean duty, custom, and so on. And can mean even a thing. Dharma can mean an object.
Yeah.
Something that has a nature that is a particular characteristic. Dharma can mean that. Or even a quality that a thing has. Dharma can mean that. Dharma and dharmin. But the highest meaning of Dharma is reality itself. And then it is all that, and therefore freedom, since reality is freedom. It can mean freedom, Dharma means. And therefore, Dhamma Vijaya means conquest by truth is how people translate it. But truth can mean fanatical things.
Sure.
So I prefer to say conquest by reality, by having people become realistic and realizing what life is about and conquer, and their minds being conquered toward love and compassion and wisdom. That's what he meant, I think. So that was saying, I will only go by soft power. And he proudly says, I sent emissaries to Turkey, to
Greece.
Egypt, to Greece, and to Cyprus, and to all sorts of places. And
What did he
which
call those
surely
emissaries?
did.
Do you remember what he called the emissaries?
The what?
What did he call those emissaries
What
that
do you-
traveled around?
Dharma,
Like
I forgot.
Dharma, Dharma Vadin or something like.
Dharma ministers or something.
Yeah, ministers of
Mantina,
Dharma.
Dharma representatives, something like that.
Yeah.
Yes. So that means somehow like teachers about reality. Actually.
We need those today.
People wrongly think that means missionary. You have to
Yeah.
believe in something, like a missionary. And you have to believe some dogma, but I don't think so. You have to believe your own intelligence.
I agree.
That's the Indian essential thing,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
And that's how India invented yoga. Because yoga means unifying your body with what your mind understands. And that's why then they end up with asanas and things like that as well, and breathing method and so forth. So you understand with the cells of your body, that's key.
So, I think of this example which you mentioned about Dharma, that if the Dharma of sugar is to be sweet, or the Dharma of fire
that's where it's quality.
to produce heat
quality.
or light,
Yeah.
our Dharma, the Dharma of humanity,
Right.
should be to be humane,
Yes.
to be human
that's
beings,
correct.
to live.
Because it comes from a verb dhur, which means to hold.
Yeah.
So it's what holds something. But on the other hand, there are two different ranges of the word. The basic range is what is called by sociologists pattern maintaining meaning. Like duty, custom, even religion is usually more like a holding a certain pattern. But then from the time of Patanjali, Buddha, Mahavira, it came to mean pattern transcending meaning. So holding you in freedom, holding you apart from suffering. It's what it came to mean. And that is called pattern transcending range of meanings. And so when you pattern transcend, it's when you're just pure good, when you're just pure happy, and you're free. And then being free, you can be kind. You don't have to be angry, or you don't have to react in this and that selfish way. And so you can transcend the pattern of self-centeredness. And those are the higher meanings of Dhamma that we know of. But the lowest one is the quality of this and that, yes.
Yeah, I actually wish that we have, every country of the world should have Dharma ministers, where they
Yes.
send them to other countries as ambassadors to spread peace and love
Well,
and
we sort
friendship.
of do. We sort of do. Like America has racism, but on the other hand, America also exported Michael Jackson's dancing.
Yeah.
And actually, India, by worshiping India, originally the word varna meant caste, and varna means color also.
Color.
And believe me, that was a skin color issue. Dasyu, in the early Vedas, the word Dasyu meant the Harappan people.
Right.
And it has also a dark quality about it. So Krishna Das, now we say, well, slave of God.
Yeah.
But Das meant, and some other thing, the Dasyu is, to Indra, you go get rid of the Dasyus.
Yeah.
So therefore, and yet India reached a thing where they have God becomes the color of the dark thundercloud, and it's worshipped. So that would be like if the Protestants in the American South worshipped a dark Jesus, like Michael Jackson Jesus, who could dance like that, And that's going to be a little while in the South of America, but it's going to happen. Don't worry. In a way, indirectly through Hollywood, it kind of does. And so that's the soft power of America before. Yeah. Why people liked Hollywood and The Matrix and the Avatar and this and that, And then then Bollywood has India's soft power. But and then what? Now we're having Chinese soap operas. That's good. But the communists don't encourage the right kind of soft power. So any suppressive dictatorship doesn't encourage soft power, because the creative people tend to be a little insubordinate. They're naughty when they're children, usually, and then they're a little bit, they challenge authority. So authoritarians don't like them. So then they destroy their talent, So that's why we have to have open societies, hopefully.
Hopefully. You mentioned children from that degree. Like we have today, I feel, more than all of the kings of history. We have more technology. We have access to food from every corner of the globe. Just within this short area, we have access to education in our pocket. Even immense amounts of education
Mhm.
connection, but yet people are not as happy. I feel like they're more increase in anxiety, increase in depression, mental health concerns. All of this is heightening, but I feel yet when you have this worldview of love and compassion, and that the universe is holding that goodness as an inherent quality, Satchitananda, that bliss that's within
Yeah.
that we find. What can younger people today, what can my children growing up, how do you feel they can access that? One way is we feel through service that we are doing that, like when you
Mhm.
forget about your individual self for a short while and you're just feeding people, you actually
Mhm.
become lighter and then you feel
Yeah,
more
well,
connected
actually,
to others.
it's not bad, however, to admit that when you're feeling people, then you do feel better. And actually, modern psychologists, even there are some who make argument there's no such thing as true altruism, because the altruistic person actually feels better than the selfish person.
Right.
And you know, the Lama's response to that is that's not a drawback of altruism, that's a bonus.
Didn't he call it something like good selfishness or something like that?
Yes, wise selfishness.
Wise selfishness.
Yeah, be a wise selfish. Yeah, my old Mongolian Lama used to say that, and His Holiness says that. And that's correct, you know, and that's really very good. Whereas, like Carl Sagan, some of the materialists, he used to say, well, people get compassion fatigue. And they have a concept like that. Or you can't really be kind, and that'll make you wear out. You'll just be caught in people's suffering. You're dragged into their suffering with them. But that is a mistake, I think, actually. Although you can overdo it, certainly. So I don't think there's any shame in being proud of the fact that you feel better being generous. We could emphasize that in a useful way, I believe.
Mm. What other things can people do you feel? Like what can young people do to...
Oh, they can go to the Taylor Swift concert. They can go to the Rolling Stone. They can go to the Beatles.
Yeah.
That's where they then suddenly feel more free, you know. And then parents should let them go. That's the point. And don't be scared they're going to get in trouble there. You know, that's just talk about soft power. Taylor Swift can sit there and sing and chant and dance, and 80,000 people will feel much better about life, and they'll want to be loving and kind, you know. And the parents shouldn't be scared of that, actually.
Yeah.
And only people who don't like that are the authoritarian people. They want to suppress people.
Is that a quality of Sangha and Satsang that's happening there when people come and sing together and come together?
Yeah, that's a kind of giant satsang, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of hearts united, coming together for a single cause.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Taylor Swift is Bodhisattva, 100%. So were all of those great singers and chanters and Patti Smith and all of them.
I'm obsessed with the idea of Bodhisattva. I love it. I just feel that even Hanumanji, when you think about Hanuman on one knee and Ram can't pick him up in that story of the Ramayana, even he can't be lifted. For me, that feels like Bodhisattva.
That's very good. Sure.
Do you see that in the idea of Hanuman as somebody who wants to remain on one knee in service?
Yes. Well, have a look at this. Manjushri, these bodhisattvas are actually Buddhas who then re-manifest as bodhisattvas to approach the beings rather than act like somehow remote from them.
And if somebody doesn't know what is bodhisattva, how would you describe that?
A bodhisattva is a hero or a shiro for the open-mindedness of enlightenment. They're, you know, that's a great thing. That's where, in a way, the followers, the seekers of enlightenment in history, rarely did crusades and things like that because, you know, human being tends to want to dominate, right? So then the problem is, you say, I'm going to conquer the world for emptiness. It sort of quiets things down, you know, shunyata, you know. And you know, shunya is India's great invention. Did you know that?
Zero.
It's the zero. And it went to China and went to Europe, and they didn't have it until about 1,300 years ago. So they couldn't do accounting, and they couldn't count. They couldn't have digital AI because India was the only one who had the zero, you know, because of their astronomy was very good, you know, in India. So, Indian science is actually a little bit superior in some respects, actually.
I feel like
and now has to spread, not just religion, but science.
not many people are aware of that. For example, I grew up here in the UK, and we were never taught that, these ideas around zero.
Well, yeah,
came
the
from-
West thinks it's the best because it's destroying everything. So therefore, they think it's the most powerful. And if you have the power to destroy everything, you're the most powerful, supposedly. But actually, the greater power is the power to nourish everything, to create everything. That's really they supposedly worship the creator. They supposedly do, and yet they're scared of the destructiveness. And then the people are scared of hell because then they don't want to have too much fun and they might go to hell or something. That's really not a good idea. And God himself gets irritated because people took away Mrs. God. She's a ghost, That's not good.
Yeah.
In India, you have plenty of Mrs. God.
Yeah.
Uma.
Yeah. We just had Navratri before
What?
Diwali, 9 nights of.
Mrs. Hanuman.
Yeah.
There's a Mrs. Hanuman, I think so.
Is there?
Yes, of course there was.
Well, there's definitely Anjani, who's the mother of Hanuman. We were saying
Yeah, but there's
Anjani
also a
Putra.
Mrs. There's a wife.
Wow. I didn't know that. I
It is.
consider
And then
Hanuman
there's
is
that
a-
Sugriva or something.
Sugriva,
who's the
Bali,
king. He has a
Sugriva.
wife.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I know that there's a Mrs. Hanuman. And after all, what is Hanuman doing? Helping Rama find Mrs. Rama.
Yeah.
Sita.
Yeah.
I'm afraid it's very important.
Well, Sita
But,
and Ram are two sides
India
of the
has a
same
little
coin.
patriarchy too.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So they're working on it.
Yeah, they have to.
And the Buddhists, it's terrible. The Buddhists go around saying that in the Brahma Kayika Devas, in the realm of pure form, and the Hindus also say, there's no women, they say. But that's quite wrong. There's no men either. If there's no women, there's no men.
Mm.
Without women, men are useless, actually. So in fact, the Brahma-bodied deities within Buddhist science, there's no gender is what it is, actually. And every being has a male and female side in
Yes.
union in their own body. That's some high tantric yoga, it's like that.
Yeah.
High tantric yoga is not necessarily people having sex orgies. High tantra is where you have male and female components in your own body. And therefore you can be happy on Saturday night even if you don't have a date.
Yeah. In the Ramayana, there's a word where Sita and Ram and Sita are both the divine. So there is no separate. Ultimately,
That's
there's
right.
no separation.
That's right.
And Hanuman is just helping the realization that they're both
That's
one.
right. That's very good. That's correct.
And I love the fact that in that whole narrative, Hanuman is always either bringing medicine to somebody who's sick when Lakshman's sick,
Yes.
or working to try and rescue Sita and do that work, and always trying to
Yes, there he is
do some
holding
service.
the Himalaya.
Yeah.
So actually, that's Tibet.
Oh, wow.
He has Tibet in his hand there, and he's bringing the medicine from Tibet.
Yeah.
Because that's where the highest medicine grows, in the high altitude, getting the sun rays at the high altitude.
Well, you
More
once
powerful
told
medicine.
you once told me about Hanuman being one of the progenitors of the Tibetan race.
Tibetans have a legend that their progenitor was a monkey, who was a bodhisattva monkey, but they don't use the word Hanuman
Yeah.
in that that I've ever heard. But they do use the name Hanuman for Kalki, for the future.
Oh, that's interesting.
They have Hanuman as KD was the one who was really noticed that both Ram and Hanuman are in the army of Kalki, and that's for Hindus that can be Vishnu,
Yeah.
and for Buddhists that's a kind of Vajrapani, So they both connect in the future, And in the past, it's just the idea of Himalayas where the medicine comes from. I think because Himalaya is associated in the Indian mythical mind with Meru,
Yeah.
the cosmic axis, the axial mountain of the planet, And modern people think ancient Indians were primitive because they thought the earth was flat, but that is actually not correct. They think the earth is a mountain, giant mountain, so they think the planet is a giant mountain. But then they do think that then the continents sticking off the mountain are flat. So it's actually a little more subtle than just the earth is flat. They more had the idea of a mountain being a mountain in the middle of the cosmos with the stars, and they were very good in their astronomy, actually, and predicting eclipses and things like that. And even, I think, if you look in that wonderful book, The Golden Road, there was someone, one Indian mathematician, not Bhagbata or Aryabhata maybe, who predicted the geocentric model rather than the flat Earth. So it wasn't so naive, actually. And they didn't make spaceships because the yogis could have subtle bodies, akasha bodies, and they could fly around the planet. So they didn't need spaceships in their tech, Indian tech. So that we have to get back to that somehow.
What do you feel for you now is left to do in terms of work? You're here in London, your schedule is crazy, you've been doing talk after talk, you're sharing the wisdom with people, but like the Dalai Lama has very clear goals about what he seeks to achieve. What is the work for you?
The Dalai Lama is my good friend, and although my current guru, in addition to him, is my wife, actually. So I do have more than him, he's not the sole guru. And actually the model in Buddhism for guru is something called Kalyana Mitra, which means a spiritual friend or a virtue friend. So it's not so much authority thing like a guru, although there is a visualizational thing where you kind of channel the spirit of the guru, because the spirit of Buddha and divinity comes through that. So it's kind of it's always sophisticated and complicated, but so that's the case. So he has a duty he feels. I could just die. I'm 84. I don't mind dying because I don't consider death is a state opposite of life, and it's just like I don't mind sleeping because I need the rest, and then I get up and do something. In fact, if I don't sleep, I take some nutmeg to sleep. And and so I don't mind dying. I'm 84. That's enough. However, the planet is in a terrible condition right now because of very bad leadership. Because we have reached a compromised state where the people are all educated in a way, even if people are illiterate in some countries like quote unquote third or fourth world, as they call it, countries. Like the state of Mississippi is like a fourth world state. In the United States, it's more complicated nowadays than just this country versus that country. And so in people like that, they have internet and they have television. They're still educated in the sense that they know what King Charles is having for dinner. He's not hidden in a palace somewhere, or they're out there eating grass or something, and some king is gorging on whatever food. Everybody knows everything on this planet. And yet the models of governance have to do with authority, military power, and this huge waste of money is being spent in mutual defense and aggression and so on. And then occasionally some mentally defective person declares war on somebody else, and then people start getting killed uselessly. And so these older models of governance are on top of a situation where everybody is actually free to know everything and therefore wants to live well. And there's no reason that they don't. And then somebody says, oh no, but then if everybody did live well, everybody would have 20 children and we'd all starve to death. Well, actually, having 20 children is not a way of living well.
Right.
There's too many of them, and you can't feed them all easily. And then they bother you. There's too many diapers, and there's too much trouble, and too many adolescent freakouts, and whatever, And then women immediately will stop having so many if they're free.
Yeah.
If they say no about it, and they choose what to do about their own body, they're the ones who have to create it, Guy just produces one like tiny little spurt or something. It's nothing. Then of course he has to pay tuition to Harvard of $1 million and so on. So that will naturally regulate. Look at China; its population is going down. Everywhere is going down. Once because the women say no. So that's it. We are self-regulating. We will regulate in freedom very well. We don't need these boss people. We don't need. Actually, there's a publication that the Quakers do in America, where they have an 8 by 11 sheet of paper, and every square on the sheet, they're like 1,000 squares on the sheet, or however many, it's something like $100 billion or something. Each one is, it's like the global economy, global GDP, something like 80 trillion or something like that. So they have all that money, and then they have all the defense budgets, and it's a huge part of it. And then there's how much on water and education, and it's a small part of it. So then they have different versions of that page, where they take this much out of the defense budgets and that, the mutual ones, balancing each other,
right?
Defense ministries. And smallest that you take half of it away, and there's no problem that can't be solved on the planet. Everybody can live in like a beautiful house with good plumbing and nice water and purified plants and growing lettuce in the middle of the dinner table.
Yeah.
There's no problem. And then, even if land, you can have these towers with lights that will grow every food in one skyscraper for like 1,000 acres, So there's no reason for all this battles, It's ridiculous, fighting over some acres of land, or West Bank, East Bank, North Bank. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the problem is, the people who have the power, they don't think it's ridiculous. So they're ready to kill to keep their power, because they're so frustrated, because they don't go to Taylor Swift concerts, and they don't know how to sing and dance themselves, and they have to learn. We don't want to kill them. Putin, and we want to have a paradise and feed Putin and Trump, but they feed them not just food, put them in a place and feed them and give them Ayurvedic massage, and drip them in warm sesame oil, and take their toes and pull out the knots in their toes from their abuse as children, and find the kinks in their spine and their back muscle and their
tightness, remove all the tightness.
Inability to have give themselves away and sexually and so on, and then train them properly,
Maybe you can invite them to Menla for a few weeks.
I definitely. Well, unfortunately, the invitation, you might have to have a strong person to grip them and walk them and take the ice people. All the ice people in America, you don't see it much, I guess, in England.
No.
But they're all terribly overweight. They eat processed food. They're very unhealthy. All of the ice people have to go to a special academy and have Wegovy injections every day to lose weight, and to learn yoga and do asanas and develop a happy body instead of slobbering around like that. So that's what has to happen.
Yeah.
Wellness industry is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and it has to expand.
Has to expand, but also, often. I'll give you an example. We were at a big wellness event, and we had a stand for the charity where we were talking about education and helping feed the poor, and helping
mental and
people.
Emotional.
But most people walked past, and the queue where you got a free shot of ginger thing or a mala that you could purchase. So we also don't want it just to be only a consumer thing where you think you're buying the next bullet.
Of course not.
So that I also feel like the spiritual essence of those things can get lost as well.
Well, in America, for example, the town of Detroit, who just elected their first female mayor.
Wonderful.
But for years, they've been having all these slums and things like that, and then people do gardening in the former slum. They tear down the building, and they start having local organic gardens in the city and so forth. And that can happen, given change economic model and that sort of thing can happen, and it does happen when industrial crashes occur, and will happen, And the idea is to try to make it happen before the industries. The agriculture industry is a diabolical industry of processing the food, putting the horrible Monsanto chemicals in the soil,
it's shocking,
and it's horrendous, and that's cancer actually. So cancer is put in the soil, and then people get plagues, and then they don't cure them, and then they're making more money. And then it just circulates in the unreal thing, which is money.
Yeah. We're going to finish up in just a few minutes, Bob, but
Yes.
I wanted you to please, if I may request you to share something for anybody who's there who wants to do work to make the world a kinder, more loving place.
Yeah, well, go find Hanuman Das and go Dharmic and go out and feed some people. And then you won't be happy because you're going to be giving them some, leftover buns and things that they may be highly processed. So they're not necessarily helpful, but at least they're not nothing. So these people need that. And then gradually, as it develops, and Go Dharma will be giving out organic food, and they'll create like kitchen gardens for people in sort of poor areas, and they'll get rid of these food deserts, vegetable deserts that you have in the poor ghetto neighborhoods, and in America they have, and they don't get to go to Whole Foods and things like that, and they can't afford Whole Foods, but eventually that's going to be happening. Yeah, and so that's the kind of thing to do. And I myself enjoyed the other day, I got to give away a couple of buns, although the lady told me, don't give them something if they're taking it themselves, let them pick it themselves. Then I got to just feel good about it. And it'll make you feel good. Don't be embarrassed. Do it for selfish reasons, because you'll feel better when you feed somebody else, which you do. And men get home from the office, and maybe your wife also has to work because you have 2 kids and you have to pay tuition somewhere. But then she does the second job, which is take care of the house and cook the food. How about you learn how to cook the food when you're still in your profession? So you have each a job and a half, rather than she has 2 and you have 1.
Right.
But then if you notice that you feel stressed out and staying at the office and all that, and she has 1, and then she has a second job taking care of the house and the children, and strangely, she lives longer than you do. If you look statistically, you have a heart attack faster before she does, because you're staying out there in some world of aggression and like a conquest and get more money and do this and that. And she actually has some of the caring back and forth kind of job. And then there's more feedback in that, and she's healthier actually.
And you recited a prayer at the end of the food distribution. You recited a prayer. What was the prayer you recited?
Which prayer?
At the food distribution. Was it Avalokiteshvara?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that is an Indian thing that the Westerners are deprived a little bit. I mean, Jewish people not so much, and Muslim people not so much. But the Christian people, which is really the Protestantism and the Protestant ethic and industrialization are very interconnected. And the Christian people are being told that there's only one guy saving them, who actually was a rabbi. He was Jewish, but he died a long time ago, but maybe he'll come back later. And otherwise nobody can save you. And you can't save yourself. And so you just have to be bossed around by somebody. And so you're feeling like you're being given a version of reality that is kind of impoverished on being saved. And whereas in India, there's like lots of angels and deities and female gods and male gods and all sorts of things. And in Buddhism, there's an infinite number of bodhisattvas all helping you. So you have a lot of Jesuses. Not verse 1.
Including Jesus.
What?
Including Jesus.
Yes, including Jesus, correct. And so that's a little more cheery. So you should try to do that and realize one Episcopalian priest that I used to know used to say, God is more powerful than any one of his religions. So your one God could also be doing in other religions for other kinds of people. Stop acting like yours is the only one he ever did. He was Christian, but he would see it that way. And so we need that nowadays. And cheer up. And so the verse that
cheer up
that he is saying is a verse where it says Avalokiteshvara, which is the Tibetans believe is the Dalai Lama. So these are people who are cheery people because they think their Jesus is right there with them, leading them. But he has the 1,000 arms of the 1,000 good rulers, who are not the warmongers, the Chakravarti Raja, they call it, and the 1,000 eyes of the 1,000 Buddhas, who are in this aeon of our wonderful, beautiful planet, the 1,000 great teachers. and who he is someone who can manifest whatever it is that helps and educates and tames whomsoever. That is to say, makes them able to control themselves and to be happy and find the blessings in their life. And that's the Avalokiteshvara, they give it the name, but in a way, it's a multi-syllable word for Isa, for Jesus.
Oh.
And that they pray. And then what they do when they eat, they offer the food to Jesus. They don't thank him for it, they offer it to him, because they say, when I eat it, I'm going to do Jesus' work. So therefore, I'm giving it to you in my heart. So I already have you in my heart. So when I'm generous and I feed people, it's Jesus doing it through me. And then if it's going to be Hanuman doing it through me, a nice happy monkey, if it's going to a divine monkey, or if it's Rama doing it through me, or Bodhisattvas or Buddha doing it through me, whatever it is, it's holiness of life. And actually, your own William Blake here, you people in England, he said, everything arise and spread your wings. He says, your angel wings, and everything that lives is holy. He has a line like that I like very much.
That's beautiful.
In his Song of Inisharmian or some really weird thing. He's very complicated to understand with him, Blake, but that one thing, everything that lives is holy. He says, arise and spread your blissful wings. He says something like that. It's a she, I think, singing it in the legend that he writes, in that particular songs of something, and since everything that lives is holy, he said.
That's beautiful.
That's William Blake.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you for finding the time to speak with
thank
me.
you. Go Dharmic.
We love you so much.
Go Dharmic.